Welcome back. This is still the Committee on Ways and Means, and it is 11 in the morning on some date that I actually have no idea about.
Nice.
Nice. Thank you, everyone. It is January 9th. I should know that because it's actually my daughter's 20th birthday today. So I'm going to do a little bit more organizing this morning. And so to start us off, I wonder if we have any nominations for a house clerk.
I would like to nominate Bridget Burkhart.
Thank you. Any seconds?
Second.
Thank you. And do you consent to the nomination?
I consent to the nomination.
Wonderful.
Be prepared, but yes, I'm excited to serve as clerk.
Thank you. We can just take an informal vote on this. We don't need to do a roll call. So all in favor of Bridget kindly serving as clerk? Thank you. Any opposed? Wonderful. Thank you very much for your service. We appreciate it. And Sorsha will explain how that works to you.
Okay.
As will Charlie.
Yeah.
And Mark. All hands on deck here. Okay. So we talked a little bit about Ways and Means Buddies, but we also do committee liaisons. And so everyone has responsibility to another committee. Encourage you to do a few things in the context of being a committee liaison. One is every Sunday or Monday, check the committee schedule for the week. So you have a sense of if anything is happening in that committee that might require you to be paying more attention to it. If there is a bill, be in touch with the committee chair on that committee and let them know that you're the committee liaison and see if they have a comparable liaison for you, or if you're going to be in touch with the chair, vice chair, whatever, in order to stay connected. And then you will likely be reporting the bills that come from that committee, but not always. You know, if it's a very controversial bill or if you have a personnel challenge with the bill, it's totally fine. Just let us know and we'll figure that out. And then make sure that you keep us informed as bills are coming towards us so that we can be prepared for them and lay any groundwork in advance for that as well. And so Sorsha will send around an email with all of it, but what we were thinking so far is that Representative Brannigan, if you could cover healthcare, Representative Burkhart, if you could do commerce, Representative Feltus, the Environment Committee, Representative Higley, GovOps, Representative Holcomb, Education. Likely we're all going to be liaisoning with education. And that particularly, that might also mean some occasionally going into that committee to hear testimony that they're taking in the committee. We don't do that very often, but sometimes that might be appropriate. Representative Kimball taking two committees, both Energy and Technology and Ag. Representative Maslin, Judiciary. We just got a bill today from that will likely go to Judiciary from here. Representative Odie, Human Services. Representative Wazazak, General and Housing. Representative Canfield, Transportation, and I will cover Appropriations. Sound good? Great. Okay. Because we're going to be doing such intense work together, that's going to require a lot of humility and curiosity and all of that. We are historically not a committee that's like really that high on sort of the bonding kind of thing. We don't tend to do like committee birthday parties or like 3 days of get to know you activities or any of those things. But it's going to be, I think it's going to be particularly important this year that we spend some time together. And so we're going to, and committee dinners are very hard to schedule sometimes. And so we're thinking we would do a standing committee dinner the third Wednesday of every month. And so occasionally people are going to miss it, and that's okay. We will all adjust. And so Representative Kimball is going to be doing some of the legwork on that. If you want to help with legwork on committee dinners, go for it. Let Charlie know. So third Wednesday is this coming Wednesday is the third Wednesday. So next week. And if you have any dietary stuff, also let
Let me
Representative
know.
Kimball know.
There a start time generally?
No,
Okay.
yes?
Not yet, no.
Question.
5:30 though sounds pretty good.
This is going out someplace, but in play, okay.
And we might occasionally go to someone's place if someone wants to host and they can, so if you want to host, also talk to Charlie about that. And Sorcia will send out emails with that. More logistics. Because we have other bills coming in here and we tend to have witnesses that come from sort of all over the State House spectrum, the agenda is an ever-changing thing. Especially certain times in the session, it might change multiple times during the same day. We do our very best not to have that happen, and it happens. So please check the online agenda always. We don't print agendas for the door because they wind up being outdated and it just confuses people more. So please, like, be attentive to the Ways and Means agenda on the committee page. If we get off the floor, please be mindful of your cell phone. Sorcia will send an email if we're going to regather. Sometimes if the floor is shorter than expected, we might come back here even though we hadn't planned for it. So just please try to pay attention to your cell phone. We very rarely start in the morning in an unexpected way. So it might be that sometime in the afternoon we would start unexpectedly, or sometime after the floor we would start unexpectedly, but you're not going to get an email that says we're starting at 8:30 even though we planned for 9:30. Like, that's not the kind of thing that we'll do.
That's actually,
Once or twice.
yeah, but you would get an email and a text.
Yeah.
That evening. It's just good to check in the evening, maybe before bed, just to make sure, but that rarely happens, but.
Like deep in the thick of it, that might happen.
So do you use email mostly or texting or both?
Will you, Sorcia?
I mean,
Why don't you tell us what you-
we usually use text. I think if there's a last minute change that has happened while you guys have been on the floor, that's the quickest way that we can get it out to you probably. So check your phone. Again, if it's overnight, I'll send both. Usually text. Unless you tell me that you never bring your phone anywhere and you want to check your email on your laptop, then I will make sure you get notified that way.
I'm one of those people.
You are?
I'm just now learning to use text, so
All right.
I'm uncomfortable with it, but I am trying.
I will make a note of that.
Thank you.
Similarly, I'm not going to announce on the floor, everyone on Ways and Means, please, something. If we're going to do something unexpected, we'll do a little sort of signaling to each other and gather ourselves. And, you know, if you see 3 people from the committee get up, probably that means something.
Follow up.
There's no bat signal to flash on.
No. I think that is the bulk of the logistical things for now. I want to talk a little bit about how we're going to do our work this session and sort of what I'm imagining in terms of a game plan of sorts. And then Sorcia is going to do some logistics on the JFO website and how information is organized and how we keep it organized. But I just want to say again that, you know, we're sitting here in this room with a responsibility to the children of this state to make sure that we maintain and grow a really strong public education system for all of our kids and for our future. And that's incredibly important work. And the eyes of the whole state will be on us. The loudest voice is not necessarily always the majority voice or the most vulnerable voices or the voices that we need to listen to the most closely. And so we really have a responsibility to listen to all voices. We will be looking at a lot of graphs and doing a lot of algebra and a lot of statistics and a lot of numbers. And it's going to be really important and sometimes hard to remember that all of that also means the lives of children and incredibly hardworking and exhausted teachers and other school staff and folks who are paying their bills too, right? And so remembering that like all of those charts and graphs are in fact people. I know that's why we're all here, but it's important that we're remembering it every day in our conversations. And so it's easy when we're deep in the numbers to get into shorthand, but just remembering that we are talking about you know, the children of our state and what they need for the future and for right now. So we are going to structure our work this session by following the lead of the Commission on the Future of Public Education, which I'm grateful that we passed legislation to create that commission last year, because what it means is that we have sort of the voices of most large stakeholder groups sitting at that table for us already, right? And so we have folks who work in the schools, we have folks from the administration, all sitting at this table with very small number of legislators to begin sort of looking for future vision for the state and who have done some short-term work. And so part of that short-term work was essentially creating a list of all of the ideas that everyone has had already. All of those ideas that everyone has had already are some sort of, you know, I think a lot of folks who were on Ways and Means last session, a lot of folks who were in this building last session, maybe even just when you ran for office, a lot of people gave you ideas on doorsteps and in past notes and in emails about what they see as the one way to make sure that we find the right set of solutions to this puzzle. There are likely ideas on that list that I don't think will work very well, that you don't think will work very well, that you don't think will work very well, you don't think will work very well. And someone, likely many people, do think that idea will work very well. And so even if no one at this entire table thinks that idea will work very well when we start, we're still going to need to spend a little bit of time on that table because we have a responsibility to everyone in the state to give that idea a bit of time to make sure we're fleshing out why it might work, why it might not work. And no piece of this puzzle is going to be perfect. Every piece of the education system has trade-offs to it. It is a complex system. When we do any fiscal modeling of it, in my experience, it is profoundly counterintuitive how the numbers come back out into the spreadsheet. And so many of our assumptions that we're all walking into the room in are likely going to be turned on their head. And I think we all need to be ready for that and patient for it. One example I would tell is when I was, before I was chair of Ways and Means, when I was on Ways and Means, we put in place a summer task force to figure out how to implement an income-based education tax. And I worked really hard to have that summer task force happen. And I was really excited to serve on that summer task force. And I was the co-chair of it. And I frankly went in there being like, I am going to be the one that gets this thing to happen, right? All that like, you remember Vim and Vigor. And throughout my work on that summer task force, I absolutely changed my mind and did not think that it was something that we would be able to implement in Vermont and something that I thought was actually the best choice for the future of Vermont. And so that's just one example. And I think I'm telling it just by way of saying like, I do not have all the answers here. I really am seeing my role as facilitator. I'm looking forward to being wrong sometimes. I'm looking forward to all of you being wrong sometimes. And I'm looking forward to all of us having a lot of curiosity about whoever is sitting in the witness chair to share their thoughts and insights and data with us. We're going to have folks from both the tax department and the Agency of Education in here a lot, as well as our own staff and members of the public. So we're essentially going to run through sort of all of those ideas on the table. Once we spend about a week getting our feet under us about how the education fund works and how a few other tax types work. The one big other piece of legislation we're going to need to move this session is the federal link up, which is just going to be interesting because there's so much up in the air with the federal tax system right now. But with the exception of that and other committees' bills, I'm really expecting that we're going to spend the bulk of our time on the education fund, as I said before. And I will stop there. Anyone have any questions or thoughts?
Comment.
I'm going to go to
Yeah.
Representative Holcomb.
happy to defer to the senior.
Well, senior baloney, but thank you very much. We're all equal here. But since you're looking across the table, I appreciate, Madam Chair, your urging us not to be dismissive of other people's ideas. I've had to relearn that from time to time. Sometimes when somebody, Joe Schmo or whatever, is presenting an idea I don't like, asking the right question, somehow it turns out it's a very good idea, but I didn't understand it because of the way it was expressed the first time. So that may occur from time to time. And it's in those discussions that we find ways to knit one person's idea together with another person's idea. So I enjoy that work when it's possible. So here we go. Thank you.
So welcome. Just two questions, which are process questions, and I would appreciate your perspective because you've had to deal with this already as a committee. The first one is just the sheer volume that came through at the end of last session. I actually think with the competition with the quality of some of what we passed. And is there how do we situate ourselves with respect to that? And then the second question, and I'll just remind us of the last night on the floor where you all came back upstairs to find $1 million and we went downstairs in appropriations and spent $1 million out of the Ed fund. And so my question is, because these things are all so connected, it's not just enough to follow your sector, we have to follow all the sectors. Is there a way to figure out all the ways that we impact the ed? And I'm sure you've thought about this.
So I have an initial brainstorm of sort of an every committee strategy, sort of pieces of the education fund that every committee there's a piece of for every committee in the building. I think it will be important for us to regularly have times where we all sit down and sort of report out from the committees of jurisdiction that we're covering. And I think that will be a helpful way to do it. I do think that this biennium, we're going to sort of, with the speaker's leadership, have cleaner flight planning around how many bills are coming out of committees and when. And I think that will help. And I'm going to sort of continue to be clear about, if you don't get it into our committee by this point, we might not be able to move it. And so we'll figure that out.
Are you gonna, as part of kind of our introductory part, are we gonna go through a detailed tutorial 101 of how the education fund works currently? And perhaps how the student weighting formula works and that sort of thing?
Yes.
Or are there already that information on your website? And I don't know.
We are going to spend the first 2 weeks, week and a half, doing how the education fund works. We're going to do that jointly with the Senate Finance Committee tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Thank you, at the pavilion, which is on our agenda. And then we're also going to do joint meetings with House Education as often as possible. And so we have a series of sort of 101s that are, we do for the full body, especially the full House that JFO and Ledge Council does based on the tax system. And those are available on our committee webpage on the far left. What we're going to have staff come in for the first 2 weeks to do is sort of a 301 that incorporates the 101 and the 201, the way you would have sort of like at the beginning of semester, right? And when they come in, when we're discussing a new topic, they're very accustomed to doing sort of a review of how it works. I think learning all of it in a vacuum without sort of the policy that we're discussing in context, I think sometimes means that we actually forget all the content and then we have to review it all when the policy comes up anyway. So we're going to do our very best to have the educational opportunities mixed into policy conversations. So we have the context for it. We can use our time as efficiently as possible. Similarly, we're not going to bring in every staff person and every agency leadership to just introduce themselves to us and tell us what their agencies do. Instead, we'll have them do that the first time they come in to talk to us about something substantive. It just seems like a more efficient use of our time, given all that we have to do this session. Representative Burke.
I have two small process questions. One is how are notes taken or kept? I'm just thinking like when we have witnesses and all that, is there an AI note taker? Is somebody sort of keeping track so that we're not just sitting scribbling or that there scribble things that we need to remember? I'm here.
That is such a great question. There is actually no system whatsoever. So
Okay.
what, like by interesting design, so everyone takes notes in their own way.
Yep.
There tends to, the way that, I don't really generally like comparing committees to families, but I'm gonna do it in this context. The way in sort of any family, someone always sort of fills the role. In a committee, there tends to be the one person who is very detail oriented that always remembers the thing that everyone forgot from last week. The person who takes very good notes. Bill actually takes exceptional notes about sort of what we do and when. But everyone's sort of expected to do that on their own in the way that works for them. There are a series of legislative trackers who work for various lobbying organizations. You have 3 of them behind you. They are taking incredibly good notes. And occasionally one can find someone who is paid to take notes, but that might have an angle that's specific to that person. And then everything we're doing is recorded and we can always watch it and I believe pull a transcript.
I'm an excellent searcher on YouTube videos, so if you're like, oh, last week we had that one guy talked about that, I find the snippet and send it to you. It's not.
And then my other small question was, is there a prioritized reading list somewhere? Because I know that on the spreadsheet that for the little pre-work that we were doing on, not little, the pre-work we were doing on Ed Finance with that bigger group, there was a tab and there's just.
I will send around pre-reading.
Wanted to ask how AI note taking works.
I am going to ask you two to have a conversation about that later. Representative Kimball.
Just a couple things. One is that there's been a publicity about whether or not the Commission on the Future of Public Education can keep up with our pace.
Mhm.
So we will probably get ahead of them on some of the topics that we're talking about, right? So they've brought us to this point and it's kind of a launching point for us to investigate the things that we need to focus on, right?
Yes, and we're going to have conversations with the commission about how we can best reflect each other's work. They knew that the legislature was going to convene. They know that they have sort of a full year left to do their work. All of the folks that we might have in for testimony are already all sitting at that table. And so it's a really helpful way for us to get feedback as we go from the field. And there's some version of the commission meeting every week. And so we're going to do our best to sort of work collaboratively with them as they figure out what their new work planning looks like.
The second piece is just on our website, there's a reports tab. And so any reports that are coming out daily and they're posted to our website. So if nothing else, just read the executive summary, but it's helpful to read the whole thing. When I was on Commerce, I took it upon myself to read every report and people kind of report on the report. It'll kill you. So, but if you just even read the report, only executive summary, that'll help before the person sits down.
Thank you.
This is maybe something you don't want to deal with, but this blower behind me is really loud. And I have my hearing aids in, but I cannot hear Carol and I cannot hear Bridget.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Let's think about that over the next day.
We're gonna be able to
Okay.
stop it.
Yeah. So we'll figure that out.
You want to swap? I'd be happy to swap.
Yeah, let's figure that out in a little bit. Thank you. Yeah.
That's also helpful to know though, because then you can project out into the room a little bit better rather than.
Yeah.
Maybe enough to, whatever.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other process? Yeah.
Just in terms, I mean, there's been some challenges around data and have you met with Senate Finance to talk already about what kind of data we need to be requesting now so we actually have it when we need it? That was question number one. And question number two is, can we also have some time to talk about what the data means and whether the inferences are actually in line with the data? And just one example I'll say is we saw some data in the orientation around the range of district spending, but what no one talked about is that some districts only have elementary students and some only have high school students. So you actually would expect a range. but we instead took it as a market of empathy. And so how do we make sure that when we're reading information, we actually are understanding it? Because I think it's hard, it's complicated.
We are going to do the very best to have the right data that we need to have. And I've been talking to JFO about that quite a bit. And the commission's been talking to the Agency of Education about that quite a bit. And as we are doing our work together, it's going to be really important for all of us who have expertise in data and data analysis to make sure that we aren't sort of carrying assumptions forward that are just assumptions and not the reality that the data is showing us. Last year, we in committee looked at a scatter chart on the screen that was designed to show the correlation between two things. And we talked there was no correlation between the two things on the chart. And we talked a little bit about how we were all sort of seeing patterns in the clouds because that's what humans want to do, right? Is to make meaning out of an image in front of you. That's like, it's essential to us as people. And so we talked about sort of what that meant for us in our work here. And so I think that's going to be an important thread this year. Thank you. Yeah, Jim.
We tend to try to organize my thoughts on things graphically. Usually I can't keep up because they go too fast here. But from time to time, I may have something worth sharing. And it's easier for me to, the other part of that is sometimes I remember things when I hear it the second time better than I do the first time. So this is an effort to take the second set of notes, even if they don't look at all the same. If it's helpful and I can share it, or if someone says, what are you drawing now? And that's okay too. Sometimes people's questions, I said this once before already today in a different way. People's questions tend to cause me to come up with a better understanding and appreciation of what's being said. That I might not quite draw it out that way without, house questions or Becca's question or something like that. Oh yeah, this piece goes here. So anyway, it's just a comment on, we'll all have some somewhat different learning styles and work styles in here, and they're all useful. And in fact, we rely on each other's ways of approaching to things so that we can get to something better, right?
And I know that Representative Odie also loves a good diagram, and we have the whiteboard here, so we can draw diagrams if we need to. And I know that the Joint Fiscal Office as an entire office has been working with a really fantastic consultant of sorts who has expertise in sort of communicating data in a way that is easier for people to process. And I know they do their best to include both a chart and a graph and numbers for those of us who experience data differently, the different way that's shared. Yes.
So like, obviously you're the chair, you'll set the agenda and you're already in touch with the commission and other experts that are regular visitors of this committee. If we feel like somebody in our community, or we have a conversation with an organization that we feel might bring a different perspective to something we're talking about, and we'd like to share that with the committee, is the best thing to do to get in touch with you and say, hey, I think this person should be scheduled.
Yes, please let me know if there's ever someone that you think would bring great testimony. That's fantastic. It's really important to me to not have the exact same people coming in over and over and over again. A diversity of thought and a diversity of perspective is very, very useful. If you can't find me in that moment, let Sorsha know, and she keeps a running list that we discuss when we do agenda setting.
Thank you.
You mentioned yesterday, there would be a lot of people that want to talk to our committee that may not be appropriate this session.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So there might be someone that approaches you to say, I really need to meet with the Ways and Means Committee. Like, thank you. No.
And you are welcome to say, I know we're really focusing our work this year, or you could say, please go check in with our committee assistant and she'll figure that out with you.
And
Does everybody-
someone could always write a letter, like
Yeah.
Charlie, that somebody really wants to say something, write it.
Yep.
Gets posted. Style out of them.
Yeah, I'm last.
I also think that a lot of folks think that if they submit written testimony, no one reads it or pays any attention to it. And one of the ways that we can help with that problem is by reading the written testimony. And so we all have a responsibility to that, right? And, also if, folks will regularly send testimony to all of us, you are welcome to reply to that. You are also welcome to wait for me to reply to all of that. If something does go to all of us, I do feel like it is my responsibility to be the one who replies, and I am more than happy to have someone else, also jump into that. Any other thoughts, questions, process? We're absolutely going to figure this out as we go.
Yeah, how do I end up with a chair with no arms? Ms. Vellum?
Yeah, let's talk.
All right.
If you ever have questions about shares or passwords or anything like that, Saoirse is right here for that. And please, if you have anything that you need to make your work go smoother, whether that is a learning style or hearing or anything like that, please let me know. I want this to be a place that is really the best possible place we can do our work together. And so we need to actually be talking about that. Also, if you do have, really want to make sure we all take time to talk about our priorities for the session with each other. And so we can figure all of that out. Also, if you just have a personal thing that means you're going to need to be out, we're all people and that's going to happen. Please let Saoirse know, and ideally also copy me. But if you don't feel comfortable letting me know, just let Saoirse know. But if you're not here, we are going to wonder where you are. So let someone know if you're not going to be here. We warn votes before we take them. Occasionally we'll warn a vote twice. Sometimes I'll warn a vote to give urgency to the conversation, knowing that we might wait one more day to vote. But just so everyone knows, we are battening down the hatches and figuring this out together, folks. Now is your time to speak. But we'll do our utmost to never surprise anyone, including folks outside of this room, with a vote. And on education finance issues, we are likely not going to be taking the brilliant solution that someone has put on the wall and passing that as the vehicle. We are likely going to be working on a committee bill. It might be a joint committee bill with education. It might not, but we will be working with sort of language that sits outside a bill with legislative counsel in order to do this work. We won't be taking a bill off the wall. We might be taking language from bills that are on the wall. And then Fridays, we have this tradition of doing bill introductions at that time in that 9 to 9:30 slot that we have every Friday morning. And so it might be 2 people, it might be 3 people, but that's when our colleagues come in and tell us about this one issue that is important to them that they want us to take up. For me, it's a really important time that we show sort of respect to our colleagues and listen in on their ideas. And often it's stuff that some of us have never thought about before in this room at all. And so that's a really great opportunity that happens on Fridays. And so we do our very best. And I think we always achieve. Every bill on that wall gets at least its 10 to 15 minutes with us, even if it's not going to get more than 10 to 15 minutes. That said, just because it gets 15 minutes doesn't mean it's going to get more than 15 minutes. And similarly, in the context of especially the education finance stuff, we're going to be bringing up, as I said, ideas. We need to be able to say the hard things to each other. We need to be able to be creative. That doesn't mean that idea is going to become law and be enacted. There's a lot of people watching our work with a lot of anxiety. And I think it's the responsibility of everyone in this room to please try to soothe the waters whenever possible. Just because something is talked about here for even a few days, let alone a few hours, doesn't mean that that's necessarily going to pass. And so I think our colleagues are going to be watching us closely. The field will be watching us closely. And I think we could do a lot to sort of soothe the waters and bring other people into sort of the curiosity we're going to try to hold in this room.
Yield bill, we don't talk about the yield bill.
Yes, so we are absolutely obligated to pass a yield bill every year. Last year, we put a lot of our education finance work into the yield bill. It's not clear if we will do that this year or not, but we will begin our work. The yield bill sort of is on a fun continuum. We begin work on it sort of usually the second week. We look at the education outlook together. And then we sort of continue an iterative process looking at the education fund outlook every 2 weeks as more school budget information comes in to AOE and tax and JFO. And so someone from the Agency of Education and Julia Richter from the Joint Fiscal Office will sort of come give an updated reflection to us on the education fund outlook. And we'll talk a lot more about what that means tomorrow. So that will be something we will definitely pass this year along with the link up to the federal tax law. And with that, do you want to give us a little tour?
Oh,
Does
sure.
that work for you?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
One thing you didn't mention, which I'll let you address, is the building has paper chairs and non-paper chairs. I think Kornheiser is a non-paper. As little paper as possible, but if you are a paper person, I can help you out with that on the slide. Did you want to say anything more about that?
Yeah, so when folks come in to give testimony and they bring a stack of like one copy for everyone, it winds up just causing a lot of extra paper in the world that most of us don't save. And we go through so many versions of things that if everyone has a printed copy of every version, it actually just gets more confusing. And often the spreadsheets that we're looking at are dynamic spreadsheets where the variables are being changed regularly by our staff. And so static spreadsheets also sort of can get dangerous. I've had a bunch of people describe sort of X 60 times to me as the spreadsheet wars. And people would be walking around with, dot matrix printer connected, you have like the, all of those pages trailing along.
Scotch tape together.
Yes, and so we're trying not to do that. And like, there are times when we're doing markup, I want a paper copy too. Sorcia's totally cool with that. She will also teach you how to use the printer at the end of the hall, which is a great printer. It works well. You can print your own stuff.
IT has to help.
Yeah.
Connect to initially, so.
So, but this is all documented online,
Yes.
correct? And so perhaps, is it on our website or is it in different places? Do we need to figure out our own filing system on our iPads, or what would be?
Great question. So when witnesses come in and are talking about a document, I ask them to always project it onto the screen so that we're all having a shared experience, because I think it feels nicer to have us all looking at the witness and the screen than all looking huddled down at our own devices. And anything that they project on the screen will also be listed as documents on our website for that day. And so you can pull them up then, you can pull them up in advance and print them if you want. And you can look at them later. So
those are
anything we look at.
Shared live
Mhm.
as well, whatever's on the screen.
So all those documents will be on our committee website under that date and supporting documents. And you're going to show us where that will all be right now?
Yeah, I'll do a little tour. I wanted to say pens, calculators, Post-it notes, everything is kept over there. Just to keep the table a little more tidy. But if you're in committee and there's a witness and you desperately need something but don't want to walk across the room, you can email me and I will get you whatever you need. Or if you find you do need a copy of something and you don't feel like or you feel it's disruptive to leave the chair, just email me and I can take care of those things behind the scene. This wall will be for the bills that are coming in, being referred from other committees that we need to look at. Bills that come right to Ways and Means will show up there. That wall will be, well, I don't know this year.
Yeah,
It's
but-
generally completely full by the end, so the market is really busy in this committee. Speaking of that, as far as reporting bills, because we have so many, I know a lot of you are used to reporting bills, but I will prepare everything you need to email the clerk's office. Nigel has a very specific wording that he will cause a lot of back and forth about if you don't get it just right, so I will supply that for you. and you can send it on. And then everything you need to report it on the floor, I will also email you a packet of things that
So you don't have to walk the bill to the clerk anymore?
you do not. It's all email. It's a new world. Yeah, I'll send you the bill, the correct version of fiscal note that you need and the vote. I think that's all I want to say about the reporter thing. I'm used to it and I know how to please Nigel, so he's very much a stickler. Yeah, the other thing I want to say, I'm gonna share my screen here. One of my duties for JFO, I am the person who connects every fiscal note that comes out of any committee, not just ours, to the GA bill page. So if you need a version of a fiscal note from another committee or you want to know where to find that, I'm a good person to ask. I'm going to show you where to find it yourself. If I can remember how to share my screen. There we go. So let me go to.
Nothing's happening.
No, not yet.
Okay,
Not
good.
yet. I've got to pick something.
How she's looking,
Yes, Representative Maslin.
Sorsha is an incredible resource. I'm stunned. Month after month.
Thank you. So I pulled this up from last year. Most of you are familiar with this. If you're new, you will be soon. Every bill, this is from last session, has its own page, and you will get familiar with this. Some folks don't know that there's a fiscal information tab down here. This is where you find the fiscal notes. And when you click onto it, the whole history of it, you read from the bottom up, that's each committee that it's passed through. And again, I link those up myself, each one, so I usually know where they are. I just wanted to make sure you guys knew that was there, and Ways and Means that becomes more important. You can also find them all on the JFO website, but frankly, when you're looking for them for the floor, this is probably the easiest place to go. Yeah.
Are those searchable? So for example, could you search for every fiscal note that mentions the education fund?
Ooh, not on the GA website, that would be a
So we
rough
have to
search.
build that.
It really works by bill and the JFO website on that search.
So you have to go individually through all the fiscal.
Yeah, if you search for education, it won't be a helpful search, sorry. Let's see, what else do I have on my note? Oh, yeah, so let's go to the current session. And I'm gonna go to Ways and Means. Well, look at, you're already all populated there. They just don't have you noted as the clerk yet, Bridget, but they're working on that. So, yeah, we don't have any documents for today. They'll be under the document search there. And as Charlie was mentioning, the reports and resources tab here already have a number of reports that have come into Ways and Means. We've got 3 from the Department of Taxes. You can start perusing those anytime if you're interested. As they come in, I'll populate them. That system, if you think there is one that should be on there that's not, please let me know, because the system isn't foolproof. There's a lot of reports that are in Ways and Means, but that's where you can find those. Once we have witnesses this year, you'll be able to search for the witness. The drawback on that is if they didn't submit a document, they won't show up there. There's another way for me to search for witnesses if you need the day that they came in, so you can see me about that. That's pretty deep in the website. When we start having, this committee will host tax workshops in February, and there'll be a lot of documentation for that, and all that documentation will show up here on the left bar of the website. In fact, let me go back to last session because we did the last biennial as well. It's all here, the tax workshops. These can still be valuable now, but some of the corporate tax.
I think that one's still,
There are updates to some of them, but the basics are all there. If you're interested in looking at that, you'll have to go back to the last biennium on the website. So, yeah. See, it's telling me I'm in 23, 24. I guess I'll have to play around with that, Rebecca, because the GA website is organized by biennium, so you would only get things from education from that biennium. Whereas the JFO website is more of an index library. It covers all sessions, so the searches can be a little more unwieldy, but yeah, you play around with it because it is session by session, but you have to be in the right session to pull up what you think you need. So it's by day, but let's look.
And just want to let folks know, we almost always post our agendas on Friday. And so you can really see them on Fridays so that you can spend the weekend sort of trying to get your head around what we're going to be doing the following week.
Go ahead.
That was just, sorry, that just made me think, if we're supposed to be sitting standing meetings with people locally, is there a day that you recommend we do that? Just wondering.
We don't meet on Mondays. And we
Tuesday before the floor, we often don't meet.
we don't meet Tuesdays before the floor because many of us have quite a commute. And we very rarely run into sort of the lunch hour. Really try very hard to protect that for folks. And tend to wrap up, you know, in a reasonable time in the afternoon. We don't go into the dinner hour or even, we don't go past 4:30 or even 4 a lot of the time.
I also wanted to remind everyone that on our website, the documents for the day don't show up until the morning of that day. Even if I might have documents that you're interested in ahead of time. If you need them, ask me. So yeah, Tuesday morning, all the documents for Tuesday populate, but Wednesday will not be available to you until Wednesday morning. So if you look at the agenda and want something in advance, just ask. I might have it. I might not, but I don't have it.
That's tied to the witness typically?
It's tied to the witness, but again, by day, it only populates day by day, no matter how far in advance I post it for myself. The JFO website, so yeah,
And
like,
we do try to make a practice of sending out the documents the day before if we have them, but it's not, it is not a very solid system. And despite best efforts, will stay a not very solid system. And that's just is what it is. We all do the best we can.
all right, so the JFO website, like I mentioned, it's not organized by biennium. It's really a reference. So I'm going to show you a few. Another one of my jobs is working on the website over the summer, trying to make the most of what was built before I took ownership of it. There is something exciting coming in just days. We're going to have a little area here with buttons that you can click on to look at the health of the general fund and the education fund and the transportation fund. I'm very excited about this. It will basically show you what the estimates are, the targets are, and where we are month to month meeting those targets or not. Here at the top, there's a subjects area and there's subject tutorials 101s on all the subjects. I just looked at this before I started speaking and I realized I need to remind my colleagues to post those things. These are out of date. But you can find some basic info on many different subjects here, especially education and taxes. The joint fiscal staff over the summer works on issue briefs on items that they expect will be big during the session or in the past couple of years that have been big, and you can search for those with this tag down here with issue briefs and they will come up here. And there are many from the fall that the JFO staff have been working on.
And I would really encourage, there are not a lot of new ideas under the sun around here. Likely if there's an idea that you're talking to someone about, there is some issue brief or fiscal note about it. It might be outdated and need updating. And you will get the general gist even by reading an old version likely.
So here in publications, we also have reports and you can look around on these tabs. Again, the website date rules, any date, so the most recent will always come up first. We do have a fiscal notes tab here. We don't have any new for this session, but they don't come in by bill number, which is confusing. So if you want to search for it, you want to hit the bill number option over in the top right corner and type in the bill number. If I type in the example we looked at, which was 289, you should get the same exact list that is on the GA page. It'll just bring everything with that bill number.
If you change that to search by education by keyword, what happens?
Let's see.
Everything.
Nothing good.
Oh, Peter.
Not
Or-
over here, it goes 4,000 entries. Well, you know, the most recent is first.
We do have Monday.
Well, if you type in fiscal note and education, you get a shorter list.
Well, and you can, there is an advanced search where you can choose the biennium and really like dial it down if you want to go into that and try your best. You can also just ask me, I heard there was a social security brief, can you find it for me? And I will find it for you.
Right.
Is there anything else I need to show you here? Joint Fiscal Committee has its own tab and you can, this is last year, this has been updated because
So
the
that's-
committee has not been seated yet for the new biennium, so any information you want to look for, meeting dates are kept. The other thing that's kept on the Joint Fiscal Committee tab that's not intuitive is our grant listings. We have a whole spreadsheet. Every grant that comes into the state is presented to the Joint Fiscal Committee. I prep all the material for that, so I have eyes on every grant that comes into the state, and as they come in, they are noted here. If you have an interest in tracking any of those, or here's something on DPR that agency received a grant, but you're not seeing it, it's usually because it hasn't gotten, we know it's coming, but it hasn't gone through the process yet. Once it has, it'll start showing up here. Any questions?
One piece of sort of the cycle, we talked a little bit about sort of the education fund outlook becomes the yield bill over the course of the year. The budget cycle for the year really begins in earnest when the e-board meets and we understand how much revenue is available. And that is something that happens like in 2 weeks.
It's on the 22nd, 10 a.m. Yeah.
And after the e-board meets, our state economist, our legislative economist will come in and meet with us and share with us the revenue forecast as a committee. And that's a really sort of a centering part of the year as well.
And Tom is coming in at 11 o'clock right after the board into our committee, so that's scheduled.
Any other questions, thoughts from anyone? Okay. In that case, thank you all. Let us have lunch and we'll see you tomorrow morning.
Right.
10 a.m.
Is it standing? Should we just assume every day we start at 9?
Yes.
Like, we'll check the agenda and stuff.
No, we will,
Assume-
yes. Assume 9 a.m. except Tuesdays when we start
Before.
after all the things. I
Madam Chair, I did have bill introductions at 9 a.m.
think we just got one bill.
It's not showing up. No, it's not showing anything.
Okay.
So do you want to start at 9?
Yeah, we'll still start at 9.
Okay, we're starting at 9.
Madam Chair, if you want, if these two gals want to swap so that